good, my brother?
Yo, peace. What's good?
Chilling, chilling, man. I appreciate you coming on.
No doubt.
So we'll get right into it because, man, I've been wanting to act. I mean, anytime I put on an album or whatever, I'm like, yo, well, he said this, or how did he get that sound? And like, since I've been listening to your music, I always have like questions for any artist, right? I could be listening to Nas or whatever. So just quickly, we do this every Wednesday, Carrying the Culture, Save the Hip Hop Culture. Heads up, Tamal, Carrying the Culture, couldn't make it. Last minute issues, but we're going to keep it moving. But every Wednesday we go live, we talk about the elements. We're about the culture and representing them how they should be, right? These days, when anybody says hip hop, by default, they think the genre of music, not understanding that MCing is probably the baby of the elements, right? So with that said, we're going to get right into it. For those that don't know, John Robinson, also known as Sci or Lil Sci, of the Scienz Alive crew, we welcome you. I appreciate you coming on, my brother.
No doubt. Peace, man. Peace. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, really.
Oh, man, I caught up most of his brother Jay interview. Just kind of
did you? Okay, cool.
I just tapped in on the random and so many gems got dropped. I stayed for the whole thing. Like straight up.
And my salute to those. I mean, brother Jay's been putting it down for years, right? But I love what they're doing, man, because again, like I say, you say hip hop and people think genre of music by default, not knowing. I mean, hip hop. I didn't come from a broken home, but hip hop taught me what my parents couldn't. Right? Hip hop made me grow up, made me a man. Right? So, constant elevation. They talk about real stuff, things the taboo things for men to talk about. Right? They get into their feelings. They get into real life issues. So I salute them for doing that.
Yeah, man. Some people get upset with me when I say this, but I say this a lot. Hip hop taught me more than any other thing, any institution, hip hop has taught me how to navigate the world more than anything else I've come in contact with. And that's why I don't necessarily have to run around proving it's a culture. Like, I literally have lived it, still live it, And it's like, I realize everyone won't see the cultural value of hip hop. Like, real talk, especially we got to think about what we're going against in today's time. Like, it's been flipped into this duplicatable thing that you make over and over and over and over again, in a certain mainstream display of especially the music genre. But, even the culture, like, think about it. They're taking the sauce and vibe and putting it into every major product sold by every major corporation in the world. Like, it's a part of it now, right? But it's also one of those things where it's important for us here who respect it, embrace it, love it, still learn from it humbly and move with it, protect it. Those are the ones who have to talk about it now. It's our duty to talk about it and speak about it because, it comes back around. Music, culture, it's a circle. Society comes back around.
Absolutely.
And, the gem is you're in hopes that, it gets to a younger and younger space that people are ready to catch it. When I think of coming up in hip hop, we were privileged as much as we don't think we were. It was a different type of privilege, meaning if you were in, you were in. Like, everyone didn't know or care. Everyone couldn't see it. You know what I'm saying? Everyone have the rose-colored glasses on and be able to see, like, oh man, this is crazy. And when it called you, everyone didn't answer. You know what I'm saying? Those who really connected in that way answered. Some answered, but they still saw it as just that thing. There's a lot of us who answered, got in it, and realized, oh no, this is a part of my life forever. In any capacity, no matter what I do. I'm a lawyer, I'm a hip hop lawyer. I'm a doctor, I'm a hip hop doctor, et cetera. And we see it. We see the manifestation of that. And to me, that's the power of it. That's the true value of it. It's beyond, these tangible, getting out the hood, buying this $1 trillion mansion type view that we've been hearing about, throughout the day. It's like, no, the true value is the storytelling, the what you learn, how you're navigating, you're getting the blueprints on how to navigate the world from so many different perspectives and capacities, culturally relevant, served right to you on a platter. And before we get into it, what I mean by privilege, right, is we grew up in a time, although it was tight knit, and if you were in, you were in, but we kind of knew where it was, like for real. You knew when it was coming on, when the album dropped. How many stores did we have to go to buy that album? Like, depending on where you were, you knew where it was on Tuesday. Boom, I could go get it. I know when the videos are coming on, and so it was like we were served like the goodness direct, and then I feel like as it got more and more and more, it was harder, in my opinion, to really focus and size down. And then it became less of choices and more select. Pick what we have here. You're not choosing anything anymore. There's only really one thing, but pick out of these, and that's what we're dealing with on the music level. But yeah, man, I want to say thanks for having me, and let's build.
I'm glad you brought that up, right? And there's so much I want to build on, and I know I'm not going to get to all the questions, and that's fine, because hopefully this is just, we either can get you on again, or maybe sometime we can build outside. But I'm glad you said that, right? Because you're right. It got to the point where, I'll put it this way. I recall the first time "Come Clean" by J. Rue the Damager was premiered on the radio. I got it recorded on a cassette. These days, you tell a younger cat, or even if you tell the story, it's like, yeah, I remember when the radio premiered like, people look at me like, what? That was on the radio? Like, yeah, man, the underground shit, the dope shit was on the radio. It was given to us. Now, it wasn't always like that, right? But, come the 90s, that's what was served. And these days, like you said, now you're given, hey, this is what it is. You're gonna like this, right? You're kind of forced to say, well, out of these 10, I'm going to have to like 9 out of 10, because that's all the media or corporate America or whatever it is you want to call it is providing me, right? So let's get right into it, man. And I don't want to jump around. I try to do a timeline, but I really like this to be organic. So I just did a few bullet points, but this approach is more, let's have a conversation. So to quote you, and I don't know, the name you've been putting in work, but I'm going to quote you. Some of y'all just knowing the name, but you've been nice. You've been dropping just jewels and constant music. But since we do talk about the elements, and since that's our approach, right? Everything, graffiti, bombing, breaking, and all that good stuff. I want to talk about, again, I'm going to jump around. I want to talk about not so much this album, but there's a track on here where you get into graffiti, right? I think it's called All City, and you get into graffiti. I know it's called All City, and you get into graffiti. And I always ask anybody that I talk to, MCs and all that, did you ever dabble in other elements before or even after you got into the MC part?
Definitely, but definitely not graffiti. Definitely not.
All right. I wasn't expecting you to say that because of that song.
It
was so vivid.
Definitely. The reason I put a definite on it, because I never considered myself gifted with the pen in that way, or like painting or drawing, etc. But always, rest in power, and shout out to Inspector Willoughby, Ross' son, right?
Rest in power, absolutely.
He brought so much to the science of life. I gotta give him his respect due. Like, definitely on the culture level, on the knowledge of self level, he brought a lot, to the crew. But even things like, graph, like on a heavy level, like real talk, the first time I watched movies like Wild Styles and Style Wars for real was with Willoughby, like breaking it
Oh,
down.
okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like one of our first tours, rest in peace, Phase 2, book Science of Life and Big Just to tour Italy in 99, 2000. You know what I'm saying?
You say Big
Phase
Just too?
Word up. So yeah, it was like, to meet Phase, but then also realize we're from the same neighborhood in the Bronx. Like to the point where shoot, he knew my family. Like after
Oh, okay.
talking, so that was legendary. And to get back to your question, that song, bro, I got a chance to big ups and major salute to Scheme TMT. I got a chance to interview Scheme. And, bringing it back to Rasun real quick, I remember, you know, we just got our deal with Subverse. We're all living together in this townhouse in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, right? And we're in there just building. We made a rule. We said no cable, no TVs allowed in the crib for at least a year. We're going in. We're going. We called it under the study. We're not just studying. We're going.
Oh shit. Okay. All right. I like that.
Yeah, under the study, right? And then I remember Willoughby like, yo, only TV we can have in there is that joint right there. It was like one of those TVs that got the VHS. And he said, we
Oh yeah.
only documentaries and empowering film that could really inspire our creativity, period. That's all we're consuming. Gems and art and dopeness, So he puts on Star Wars and he puts on the scene when Scheme and his mom is in the kitchen and he's talking about being all sick. You know what I'm saying? Man. And he's like, yo, look at his mom. And this is Willoughby. Yo, look at his mom's. And she thinks he's fucking insane and he's still dedicated. His face didn't change. He said, yo, if we can't do this as serious as that and as focused as that, we probably shouldn't do it. And, it was just like, damn. Like, when I saw that, I never forgot it. Fast forward, I get to interview Scheme. We kept contact, and Scheme worked on a vinyl project with different artists on there. He called me and he said, yo, I need a record from you. I need you to just speak about the culture. Like, you know enough about it. You come on, bro. Da, da, da. And just, I literally hung up the phone. I feel like a day or two later, that joint came out, like straight up. And it was just the film, interviewing and meeting and building with directly, like, hearing Phase just talk about like, yo, nah, that cat wasn't even there. He's lying. He came in 86. We was out there in 70, da-da-da. Yeah, he's cool. Don't get me wrong. His stuff was nice, but he wasn't just like telling you the gems. But while walking in Bologna, Italy, showing us 30-foot murals that he got paid to do. Like, boom, look at this, that. So it was seeing the evolution of like a straight writer risking his life and freedom every day in the trenches to moving out to Italy and doing it up and being well respected, like walking up the block, the neighborhood knew him. And it was just, it was epic times, man. I'm so thankful we got to do that. So yeah, that all city, that was deep rooted.
And that's why I bring it up, because I'm like, and obviously this, that album or that project has been out. And that's probably my go-to. I mean, I'm big hip hop elements to the core, right? DJing, everything, MCing. I mean, I've dabbled in everything, but MCing was always my thing. But I really respect when someone can really paint a picture, right? And that's why I'm like, when I heard it, I'm like, And that's the first question. I mean, well, not the first question, but the first question off of that album. So I'm telling you, when I listen to albums, I really dissect stuff. I'm like, yeah, if I ever get a chance to talk to you, I'm going to ask you that, because you could have lied to me and I'd be like, yeah, I mean, just based off of your lyricism in there, it's like, what's going on. And not too many, I'm going to say this, not too many rappers, not even MCs or groups, just rappers can really paint that picture or even want to go that route, right? Now I'd rather talk about this, grab a gun, blah, 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 blah. So question then, okay, so no other elements, you didn't do any of the b-boy popping?
Definitely. I mean, young though, young b-boy.
Nothing prominent?
Yeah, man. Had the Lee patches on the tongue of my shell toes with the tap back of them. You know, yeah, we were doing it. We were doing it. And we did all of that. But it was, again, all of that too was very inspired by the film. Like, you know, I remember seeing the beach streets, you know, even the break-in movies, putting us on to the West Coast and what was happening there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, you know, the wild styles, but then also The Last Dragon, you know what I'm saying? It was just all these different movies that had like just what we were into. And I mentioned The Last Dragon because when I think of myself b-boying back then, I also think of myself rocking ninja suits and karate slippers, you know, like just because kung fu was the shit, you know, karate was the shit, Bruce Lee, you know, and I think about, yeah, that was the culture we were around, just in the hood, in the neighborhood. Everyone was tuned into those Saturday morning kung fu flicks, you know what I'm saying, or Saturday afternoon, I should say. And then also the hip hop, the b-boy, you know, that dress. When I think of, you know, even though I didn't draw, the people I knew who draw, that was the character, right? You're drawing the fat laces and the
The
cane.
fat laces, the Adidas, that, yeah.
So yeah, it was something that was just implanted. Like that was the icon of the look back then, you know? So yeah, I mean, in terms of that, I was always in it. You know, I can remember being young in the South Bronx, shoot, barely talking. I used to call the train the fast bus, you know, to my mom. Yeah, and it was just, when I think about those times, it's just colors, vivid colors, and just everything was painted on. You know what I'm saying? Like for real. And that was, I think, what was a part of what attracts me to the culture this day. Like the colors, but not just in visual color, in sound, in ideas, in innovation, in approaches, and you know, and as you grow in it, you're able to understand what's not necessarily for you, but because it's so huge, it's like, yo, it's a part of it. Like you can't, it's a part of it. That big, it's become a monster. You can't just put your thumb on it anymore and say, this is hip hop. Nah, yo, those days are long gone. So it's like, get used to it. It's a monster for real.
That's a good point.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I appreciate you that for diving into that. So okay, and there's no way, not even close, that we can dive into each one of your projects. I'm telling you guys, this, I mean, it goes on. So I kind of, I grabbed a few records, a few tapes, and just kind of like want to touch base on a little of them. But is it safe to say Powers of Nine Ether, Fondulum was the start?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. And I'll say this on record. I wanna hear Bobbito's perspective. I'm gonna at some point interview the guy and just hear his perspective. But from my perspective, or our perspective, I would say we became, you know, fans of the show. Just tuned in, Stretch and Bob. You know, we tuned in with fans of the show, even really before me and my brother met Willoughby. We were already fans of the show. We were in New York, you know, young, but high school age. And I feel like just being fans of the show, we would always hear Bobbito talk about showcases he hosts. All that in words at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to hit up one of these showcases. So that's what we started doing, frequenting these joints. I remember one particular time I went, I feel like I was there. I was there just me, right? But I brought the Powers of Nine Ether, the Anthem, and some other songs on the tape. But it wasn't, listen to my demo, Scienz the Fondulum. That's not what it was. It was literally, Bobbito wasn't necessarily a DJ yet, like on the turntables like that. This is early in the radio show, right? So this had to be like 95, 96.
Damn, okay.
You know, so we gave him a tape more so when Stretch was absent for the show, we knew Bob played tapes. So we like, yo, maybe he'll on the show. That's all we wanted. Literally, we weren't even thinking as far as, and I feel like Bob hit me up called me, left a message on the answer machine, kind of like to hit him back, and then found out like, yo, he wanted to do a record. And that first record was The Powers of Nine Ether. And that definitely, I feel like pretty instantly took us from just scaling the scene of the tri-state area, Philly, etc., to now we're moving over across borders, to Japan, to throughout Europe and other places.
Huge.
Yeah, yeah. So that definitely helped us in a major way. And I feel like to do two and do a follow-up, it was an honor for us, just knowing that, I've heard Bob say it more than twice. Anything that came out on Fondle he personally loved. Otherwise, it wouldn't come out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I've heard that. Yeah.
Up. So that was an honor, and that was life changing for us because we just saw ourselves in a different light. It helped us build our confidence and kind of find a different perspective, but then also build a different pool of networking. That's how we were able to build with Big Just. You know what I'm saying? We were building from, word, like fondling, word. It gave us more pedestal, more, that's how we met a lot of the cats, some cats I met early before that, like Rest in Peace, Pumpkinhead, Peace Wordsworth, and, Punch and AL, and those are the cats we just met in ciphers, etc. Even Kweli, meeting him in Kiru Books, the cipher they had there. Yeah, exactly. So it was an era in time, but yeah, man, that move, a huge chess move for us, and it still resonates to this day. Actually, this year is 25 years from The Powers of Nine Ether.
You took that right out of my mouth, because that's what I wanted to bring up. These days we're I don't want to talk about this particularly because I have my own views on it, but we're apparently celebrating 50 years of hip hop, and depending on how you look at it, right? Because we're looking at it 70, 73, but graph writers and DJs and all that, Disco King Mario, they were doing that prior to 73. So again, that's not the topic, but I brought it up because we definitely love, one, giving flowers to those that are still in the physical. We don't want to wait until, knock on wood, something bad happens. So I wanted to bring that up as well. That's no chump change, man. And you stay, I'm going to jump around, but you stay consistent with the music, which is hard to say for a lot of artists that come from that era, right? Let's say, I'll even say like post 93, 94, 95, somewhere around there. But you stay consistent. Now, I want to go back a little bit because you brought up Subverse music. My question is, obviously, I wanted to follow up with the whole, graffiti or any elements that you would do. So you got into the music, Scienz Alive came about. You can touch on that if you'd like. My bigger question is, what life experience, if any, brought out the conscious approach in your music? And I bring that up while I bring this up, because this album right here, bro, this was 2000, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
My hip hop listening, I mean, my ears were bleeding, man. We got to I don't even have to tell you. I don't have to tell anybody that's listening because they know. But it got to a point where I'm like we said earlier, I'm almost forced to listen to some BS. Like, that's all I'm listening to, unless I'm like, I'm from Southern California, 30 minutes south of LA. So it was either the G-Funk with Snoop and Death Row and, gang this, or turn on the radio and listen to whatever is coming out, bling bling. So when this came out, this was a breath of fresh air. So question, what life experience, if any, gave you the conscious approach to your music that's still very prominent today in your music?
I would say it was definitely my heroes, like listening to the heroes on the radio. You know what I'm saying? Shoot. KRS-One was on the radio. Rakim was on the radio. Big Daddy Kane was on the radio. You know what I'm saying? Run DMC was on the radio. Curtis Blow was on the radio. So it was like all of these guys had storytelling and messages and depth, but was able to tell an engaging story. Like that's a thing that I feel like people underestimate. Like it's not easy to tell engaging stories that people remember for real. Like
Right.
to me, songs like Lottie Dottie is like super genius because it's like, yo, that's a song you can sing and like literally the whole stadium knows it, like word for word, you know? And it's like, that's genius to be able to do that. But yeah, I think it's really about not afraid to show your value through how you speak it. You know what I'm saying? And that brought it, but I gotta give props again to son, Inspector Willoughby. You know, it's like 92, I did a Flow Joe, you know, the Fat Joe song, we got a Flow Joe.
Yeah.
That I could rock it this way, I could rock it that way, I could rock it all the way from Bronx to Piscataway. That's what I did. I moved from the Bronx to Piscataway, New Jersey in 92 and went to Piscataway High School. And my second day of school, one of my homegirls, Meek, that I just met in homeroom, she saw me looking over at the table at this cat sitting over there. She was like, hell, don't go talk to him. He's always like reading these weird books and just listening to his Walkman rap for himself. I was like, that sounds dope.
Yeah, you're like gravitate towards that.
That was Rasan. And we met, real talk. I feel like we were so connected as Scienz, man. Like when we finally really got out of high school and connected, there was, I don't know, at least a 10-year stretch or something like that where maybe not 10, maybe like an 8-year stretch where I can't remember us not seeing or speaking to each other in a full day. You know what I'm saying? It was just connected. And what he brought to the table was very well read, you know, knew a few languages, and this is in high school, you know what I'm saying? And just was able to break things down to us to let us understand that no, there's a need for you to understand better who you are and how you fit in society, but even more so, go back to the blueprint of where you're from, so you're able to move and navigate in that manner that's in most purpose of what was already. Be a part of the continuum. You know what I'm saying? Add on. And this is how we were thinking in high school. You know what I'm saying? And it was meeting that brother that just had us in a different space because he was in a different space. And, you know, later we found out he was the guy in high school getting in trouble because he had facial hair in like 10th grade and he was going to clubs in New York and just staying out all night, coming home 5 o'clock in the morning, you know. He was that guy, but just hanging out with the older cat young before he was supposed to because he was able to look the part, right? And it's like wisdom, Brother Jay just said that. Wisdom comes with time. You know what I'm saying? So you put your time in, that's when you really get your wisdom. That's where value comes from. It's like putting that time in and going under the study. Like that's what we called it. We'll build on that more, but you know, shout out and respect and power and, you know, blessings to our son, Inspector Willoughby, like our true brother forever, but a true blessing to our lives. Like, real talk. He brought a lot to our lives.
And it, I mean, it definitely, that's the reason why I bring it up, right? And I didn't know, I mean, if you put it into perspective, it doesn't matter if I go back to my high school days or if a younger cat today is in high school, but for someone to be elevated in thought, process, reading, language, whatever it is, in high school, and keep it moving throughout life, right? Because, you know, I tell my nephews all the time, you know, whatever you think high school is right now, it's not going to be that 2 or 3 years, even a year after high school. People think like, yo, my friends, and that's what it's all about, man. I promise you, half of those friends are not going to be there a year after high school. It's a whole other life after high school. But I bring it up is because if that was you or you guys in high school and it remained your approach and your daily practice through through friendship, through the next couple of years, dropping Book of the Dead, Project Overground, and then just moving forward, and especially till this day. I mean, this recent album, which we'll get to, Live Life and Tell Stories. I mean, this is which is a great album, by the way, or a great project. You're consistently dropping jewels, and that I want to take some time to show appreciation to you, because in the midst of a bunch of racket, in the midst of, and no disrespect to these artists, but there's a lot of artists that, great music, great beats, and I rock with them and, on some battle stuff, but it's like, I've heard that before. When are we going to move forward? And most artists the little artists, very few artists that are coming across on a conscious tip sometimes might sound too preachy, if I can say that. With that said, all right, so high school, you're like I said, I wish I can get to all these albums, but you're, let's say, 2 albums deep, Project Overground. At what point do you say, do you want to, how can I explain this? How can I say this? There's so much shit going in my mind. Okay, let's put it this way. We know you're an educator. Where does that come into play in your life, in history? And then I'll go back to what I was talking about with the albums.
Yeah. I mean, it came to play later, but I was reminded that it's always been that. And I'll explain. J. Rawls, peace to J. Rawls, Dr. Jason Rawls.
Dr. Jason Rawls, yes, salute.
J. Rawls and I have known each other since early 2000s, right? So easily 20 years plus. And we worked together, several records. And it wasn't until, I would say, roughly like 2012, 2011, around that time, we're in Cali doing some shows, and we're kicking it. And when you're doing music, you never talk about like work you're doing. You know what I'm saying? You just don't. It's like we just didn't talk about it. And at the time, Rawls launched a dissertation for his doctorate, and he'd start talking to me about just the work he done. And I'm like, hold on, you're getting a PhD in what? Like, know this. Yeah, it's incredible, So learning that was like, wow. And then at the time, him studying just reading all these different articles, dynamic scholars who were also hip, you know what I'm saying? But high level in the education world as well. You start passing me these different articles, your Dr. Chris Emdens, your Dr. Bettina Loves, your Emery Petschauer, Dr. Emery Petschauer, just all these different hip hop scholars, you know what I'm saying? Meaning scholars who grew up in the culture.
Right.
And their take and perspective on just so many different things I was doing at the time that it changed how I viewed what I was doing, So fast forward, I get to meet some of these people, especially shout out to Chris Emden, 2 main things. One thing, he told me, the best teachers are MCs. You know what I'm saying? Think about how we learned. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you're right. And, like I said, I'm always saying hip-hop has taught me so much. And a lot of it was taught through the mouth and voice and cadence of an MC. You know what I'm saying? So that's one. But then also my hesitance when it came to write a book. That brother told me, bro, how many albums you got? And I couldn't even really tell him. He's like, exactly. You wrote books. Very similar process, very similar mindset. Like, you wrote books, bro. Why can't you write a book? Come on, man. And it reminded me, you know, I had to have those reminders. And it rooted me in the work in a different way. It gave me a different perspective. But getting into it hands on, I feel like it was like 2010, 2011, back from tour. And I'm realizing, you know what? I wanna work with young people in some capacity, you know. An opportunity came up, long story short, New York City, to help high school seniors pass the statewide exam using youth culture, hip hop culture, and the aesthetics, etc., in the form of slide, video, whatever you're in, to help them really gain more relevance to world history, U.S. history, and LA specifically. So that was something that I entered into just really as an experiment. Yo, I do want to, and you know, wind up loving it to a point where by the time I catch up with Rawls, I'm getting all this extra intel from these high level scholars and bring it into the work, seeing magic happen because I was there. I was there for it. I was really giving them a pure, authentic, true self, my full self. I wasn't sugarcoating anything. The beauty of the music I was doing, I didn't have to hide myself. You know what I'm saying? They could go listen. I didn't have to hide myself. They could go find me on social media. And that was a powerful exchange. So it changed my scope of how I even saw education for myself, but just for young people, period. I feel like it's just been revolutionized in so many capacities, and it's because of hip hop, you know, and not talking about the music, like we're saying. It's those cultural nuances. So when I was in these classrooms, school communities, etc., and the young people were resonating with me in a certain way, it had a lot to do with my knowledge of nuances, the understanding of me being around my younger self and being able to connect in a different way through the music, through the culture, through the events and things that were happening in the culture, relating them to the content in a real way, because that's the one thing that young people don't get credit for. It's all that they bring to the table. We're always saying how they're dumbed down. They don't do this. They do everything. We just don't see because it's not like how we used to do it, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah, they're the ones who are literally like bringing new things all the time. You know, we don't got time today, but I'm the guy to run them off. They did this, and it's a real thing. That's why the book is Youth Culture Power, because it's really a force, and it's a global force that's a lot like, you know what I'm saying? It's connected. You don't even have to speak every day to be on the same page because you're in that culture, you know?
So that jewels left and right. Again, I have questions, and then questions arise from what you're saying. If you can, and I'm not forcing you to, because I know some people are like, no, get the book, but Youth Culture Power, a book, a project, an album as well. Again, like you were saying, it's a way to better connect for educators, teachers to connect with the youth. My wife's a educator. So she's been doing it 20 something years. She started off with the after school program. She did that for years. Right now she does stuff for the state. But, you know, I always mention your name. And just yesterday we were going through, you know, some of the book and whatnot. And, you know, now that she's gotten to the point where she's up there and she can kind of hand down her knowledge for lessons, she was like, I'm gonna take this book and I'm gonna pass it on and see how we can engage, which is a beautiful thing. Are you able, again, this is where I say some people were like, no, read the book or get the book. Are you able to provide a bit of an insight as to how you approach the youth with the culture?
Absolutely. Very similar to what it would be like being at a live show or a hip hop community in a public forum in a right, you know, the true vibe of like the New Eurekan Poets Cafe or the Lyricist Lounge, right? It's a safe space. It's very welcoming. You belong. Your value is seen at the door as soon as you walk in. People understand your value. You don't have to translate your value
Yes.
or get off at the door. And I think those are the nuances that sometimes are left out, you know. So the call and response. I stuck away from using the bell or, you know, the countdown 1, 2 to get their attention. I like call and response, more native to the culture. You know, being real talk, just being pleasant and approachable is one. You know, noticing things, like for real, noticing and learning who your students are more than just their first and last name and kind of what they look like really understanding the nuances, especially in New York City, the cultural nuances that exist in your room. You may have kids from West Indies, West Africa, the Middle East, India, and Japan, and East Harlem, and the Bronx, and Brooklyn all in one class. You know what I'm saying? That can easily happen, and it does. So it's like, to not do the due diligence to learn who the young people are in the classroom, I feel like it shuts you down. But to get more into the hip hop, I think it's more about like understanding the social emotional part, you know, the building up of the community, meaning do things that they could kind of big up each other, do activities like that, you know, where they could kind of big each other, do activities where you're calling out things and they're standing up and moving around, so they're learning about each other, they're finding their tribe, who likes the same things, who doesn't like the same things, blah blah blah, and really be intentional about these different things. So I think that's most of it. But as you get deeper, you start to realize that young people are the creators of the new things that happen, right? So you could take that and bring it in, and it's hip hop as much as it could be the music, the aesthetic, the, you know, the history and understanding that, right? But then it's also understanding that, yes, you as the facilitator are like the DJ. You got to mix it up. You got to have a dope playlist, a dope selection. You know what I'm saying? You got to read the room and understand, like I said, who's in this room. Am I bringing in things that's dope? You got to listen. We got a song called Classroom Chatter.
Chatter. I was just going to bring it up.
You got to listen, right? Listen to the chatter that's happening. It'll tell you who's there, what they like, what they don't like. Bring it in. Put it on the smart board. Let that be the intro to a lesson that may otherwise not be recognized. You know, let them see themselves in the work you're doing. I don't care what it is. Let them see themselves in it in some capacity, and then create something around it. That's how they really learn. Otherwise, it's just going in and regurgitating back out. If you want them to really embody some of this stuff, bake some realness into it, you know, and really understand where they come from and meet them there. Because if you don't do that work, it becomes the hardest gig in the world, in my opinion.
Do you think, and again, you know, my wife, every time she works from home now, and that's what I mean, I'm literally talking to you on my desk, my computer's here, and I do that as well. So I hear her, but every time she used to come home, it was, you know, certain reports and certain stats and you know, things that happen within the educational system. And she tells me her thoughts. I wish I can change this. I wish I could do that. Do you think, a very bland question, but it's safe to say, right, a lot of educators, not just teachers, but a lot of educators are no longer in it, or maybe never were, no longer in it for the educational part, more to collect the check. They're not in there to shape the youth.
No, I think it's the other way around. You know, I feel like those that, in my opinion, those that feel like that are probably the ones that are kind of on their way out. You know, I think it's more of an influx of innovative minded, I'm going to take some risk and kind of push
Okay.
up against, and like I see a lot and hear more about that type of stuff than anything. And I think it's been more of an influx of, you black and brown communities understanding that more of us are needed in the field of making sure that the young people are good. You know what I'm saying? And the reality is we're at a time now where, education has shifted so far, we can no longer hide under tradition. Tradition doesn't work. It worked for a very, but education is so massive and nuanced all in one that we can't look at it from just narrow perspectives anymore. You know what I'm saying? We really look at it from a grand scheme of things and understand for real how young people learn today. Different. It's different than how we didn't have computers in our, you know what I'm saying?
Definitely did
Yeah,
not.
that's a different life. So we can't act like it's back then if that's the case. We got to things up. We can't keep saying put your phone away. It's not a phone. It's a supercomputer, and learn how to speak productively with it. And let's get it going because it's a part of the fabric of the world. Like, we can't have our young people not knowing how to use this technology on a high level because it's a part of the fabric of the world, and it's really going further as we see. So they technologically literate, definitely.
Man, I honestly, and I want to try to get so much into this interview. And honestly, the educational part, again, my wife being an educator, I have so many questions, but maybe we can build on another time. I want to dabble in a few other things here because, again, like I said, anytime I listen to your music or even just the science of life, I always have questions. Now, obviously, and if you're tapped in, you guys know who John Robinson is. If you don't, again, MC, producer, educator, dope artist, good person, just based off of what I've seen and what I'm talking to you about now. I have a question. And going back into the whole rap, I say rap to put the foundation. I'm talking about genre of music, not so much hip hop, the culture. But how do you, in terms of music, how do you approach your projects? Because I mean, you've collabed with countless amount of people, right? You've collabed with Blue, PBD, um, shit escapes me right now. Just a bunch of different people. Carlos Nino, right? So different styles, almost experimental styles, right? So for a hip hop head, let's say this, for a hip hop head that is underground head, it's all about the boom bap, to come out with like, I don't know if I say the Carlos Nino album is experimental. I mean, would you say
Yeah,
that's an experimental album?
yeah, but in a
Yeah.
great.
Okay. So let's put it that way, right? How do you approach your music? Because again, I've always, as a writer myself, right, and I don't have CDs out or actual. I mean, I've always been an MC. I'm 42, been rapping since 12. But it's hard for me to be like, all right, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna create this musical background, this beat, and then turn around and write to it. I like more picking out beats from somebody else. Um, one, for lack of my knowledge, have you put out your albums with your beats? You personally, not so much Scienz of Life, everybody together. And what's different? Is it easier for you to say, like, I'm going to create the beats for this full album and then write to them, or say, I'm going to employ the services or collab with this producer and just write to his music?
No doubt. Well, no. Answer the first question. That hasn't happened yet. I haven't self-produced an album.
Okay.
So so that hasn't happened. That will happen, but it hasn't. Um, and typically, it's funny hearing you ask that question. my answer would be some of it is just energy, and you know, energy, things just happening because they're supposed to. You know, like for the Carlos Nino album, that was supposed to happen just like it happened, and it taught me, it changed. I shouldn't even say change. It grew my perspective on creating albums, because it was the first time that I was creating an album that I was a part of directly, um, that was literally calling in OG musicians to play on records, and you know, combining different sounds and instruments that aren't typically on a hip hop record, but also before making the record, listening to like Brand Nubian's first album, Jungle Brothers' first album, you know, EDP first, certain records we listen to, just remind ourselves the mode and vibe. So we wanted this hodgepodge on purpose, but we also wanted it to be very much rooted in that certain era of like the self rap. You know what I'm saying? Like real talk, where it's like, yo, I'm speaking purpose, value, and information that you could walk with, move with, and like navigate life. You know, so that was really very intentional. But yeah, like it's more about the end, more about sometimes you write things and you feel like, oh yeah, this was definitely channeled. Yeah, it was me, but this is ancestral, like for real. It's ancestral, and then you become, you get into this mindset, and you live to the point where you feel like it's not separate. You know what I'm saying? I don't separate my hip hop life from just life. I'm living. It's the lifestyle. It's a part of it, you know, and I feel like the life learner part, the wanting to always take in information part, it keeps you moving, it keeps you motivated, you know, and not wanting to label yourself as one thing either, you know, it allows you to grow. So that's what the LA times did for me. Living in LA 03 to 07, I was able to just experience so many different type of creatives and musicians that it grew my perspective in making music and being a creative in art, and the whole, you know, beauty of like being able to tap into that. That's why I call it energy, tapping into that energy and creating with it. That's what it was, and that's what it still is. You know, it's not this, yo, I'm gonna just sit down and write rhyme. I haven't been there probably in 20 years, man. It's been like, no, bro, you can't do that because you're not supposed to. And that's why I didn't. That's why everything I'm doing, no matter what style it's in, it's going to say something. It's going to have some real life depth. And that's the thing. It's not even this over intention to be conscious, right? It's just life.
It's just,
and,
and that's the beauty.
yeah.
That's the beauty. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's the beauty of it, right? Because ultimately collaborations, I mean, I know they're dope, and we have our posse cuts, and you know, your buddy De La Soul and the symphony with the Juice Crew, and it's dope music, great energy. But I think it's so beautiful, and I do mean that in every sense of the word, when two separate artists, whether it's the other side of the globe with kind of like a Kyo Itachi, right? Or even with the Carlos Nino, with other part of the nation, where, you know, two different parts of life, two different styles, whether you've met before or not, come together and you feed off each other to create something new, to create your energy, their energy, create new energy for us to, you know, like root, Black Dog says, to sweat it out our pores, right? To dissect it, take it in, dissect it, and put it back out to the world in the consciousness it was meant to be. So that's a beautiful thing. I'm glad you brought that up. And again, I can run down the list. I brought up this album. One of my favorite. I mean, a lot of the albums I can tell you they're my favorite. I mean, I was just rocking this one today. I do want to bring this up, and I don't want to. this is one thing that I've been wanting to ask you. Talk a little bit about the project with Doom. Who's this man, right?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, because I mean, I'm constantly on your Bandcamp, which is obviously how I get your tapes, right? And I want to talk about this one too. This one's great, but I'm ahead, man. And I don't know if you know, but you're gonna know if you pay attention to like my day to day. And I know you're busy, but I'm ahead. I got the posters and the boom boxes. I'm in it, right? And I dissect every word. And at least once a week, I check back on your Bandcamp. I'm like, just hopefully one day that album is gonna be uploaded into your Bandcamp where I can find it.
No doubt.
The CD, and I'm this type of person too, but these days I'm trying to watch the money. I mean, that CD goes, I've seen it go up to $150 on Discogs. It's like $75 on eBay, which is not that bad, but I'm like, it's a lot of money. I would love paying for it, but if it was you saying like, hey, I got one, I found it in the vault, I'd give it to the artist before I give it to someone on eBay, right? But talk a little bit about that album, and I have an idea why, but why that album isn't available.
Yeah, so that album, actually, it's funny that album is that album's the reason I use my giving name rhyming, right? Coming from Science of Life, Sci, Lil Sci, Doom, rest in power to the super villain. We were all in ATL area, and picking up Doom, this is the call ID era. So you pull up to the crib, you call the crib, it says John Robinson on the joint. So one day he gets in the car, he's like, yo, your name's John Robinson, bro? You don't even look like a John Robinson. He's bugging out.
Yeah, clown.
That's your government, yo, that's crazy, So I feel like maybe months later he comes to me like, yo, you should rhyme with that name, yo. I'm like, nah, come on, bro. I thought nothing close to that at the point. And he's like, nah, yo, I found these ill samples about a man, John Robinson. We could flip and do a whole project like that. I was like, yo, play me something. Let me hear it. So he played me just some joints he was making and kind of messing around with the samples and shit. I'm like, oh, this is crazy, So breaking it down more, I remember I asked him, I said, what's the difference between Sci and John Robinson? Like, how do you change? How do you make it different? He's like, I mean, one thing I would do is kill the ad libs, like, yeah, for JR, just keep it conversational. He said, if you notice on the Doom records, they're very personable because I don't rhyme with that. It's just one vocal track. And it's like speaking to the world all at the same time, but one person at a time. You're hearing it for you, And he's like, that's when you kill the ad libs, that's the effect you get, So that was
Wow.
cool for me. And then at the time, working with Shaman Work Recordings on the back end, on the business end, I was using my given name anyway, so it was like a kind of smooth transition into that. And that record, I can't speak fully because it's it's in negotiations to be
Okay.
But it has some issues. It has some issues, sample things, and
I figured.
yeah. So the streaming part is tough, definitely. But I'm working on some things. I won't even speak about it too early, but yeah, I feel like people deserve to hear that work as well, just because we spent time on it, and that was done. Every song we did together in the lab. Shout out to Morgan Garcia.
That's a great album, and I know again, I'm kind of an outsider when it comes to music. I mean, I know I don't have a lot of friends. I can count them in one hand, and that's on purpose. But I know a lot of people, in the hip hop world and just whatever it is. And anytime your name or Signs of Life come up, and I bring up that album, not every time, 99% of the time that I bring up that album, what what are you talking
Oh, people,
about? And then I pull it up. They're like, what the and I'm like, yeah, dude, like you didn't know this. And I mean, it's such a good album. You know, it's rare to hear a collaboration album uh, that marries well with each other. And what I mean by that is the beats complement the lyrics, and the lyrics complement the beats so well, right? You had Mad Lib and Doing with Mad Villainy. That's one of the greatest albums I've ever heard. But then there's other albums, I won't bring them up, but it's like, yeah, you can kind of tell the producer kind of hear the beats, send it back to me, and I'll kind of,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
do the rest. And you can tell. But this album, I mean, you say you put work into it, and you can
oh, yeah.
tell it's a great album.
Slow bake.
Um,
Yeah, it was a slow bake. It was like it felt like writing a book. That's the best description I could give because I didn't feel the need to rush through it, and it was the beginning of me starting to type my rhymes. So you know,
oh,
yeah, it was the beginning because it was like 2003 when I moved to LA when I started writing that.
let me ask you that then, because that's funny you say that. Again, I can't sit here and be like, yo, I got 3, 5, 6, 7 albums or whatever it is, but uh, you know, I started rhyming in '92, and it was always right, just the pencil and the pad, and then right around 2002, almost the same. It was like, yo, I finally got a computer. Now I'm typing them out. This is not even this. Just I just thought of it now. Did it help your writing process? Because with me, I noticed you can kind of tell the way I'm asking these questions, right? Because it's a fault of mine. I have so many things going on in my head, and it's hard for me to channel them the right way. So the same thing with my rhymes, right? The beat's playing, and it's like I think about 2 or 3 rhymes ahead, and then by the time I'm writing them down with a pen or a pencil, I kind of forget either the cadence or whatever it is. But when I'm typing them, I can just rock out them and then go back and kind of chop them up. Did you feel typing was easier, thought process
Yeah,
wise?
you know what? At first, I didn't think about it at first. The reason I started typing them was because um, started doing some recordings for sync licensing and started to work with like a publishing administrator. And one day, she needed the lyrics typed out for my entire album. And I'm like, oh man, like, and that
But
process of needing to type out the lyrics from an entire album in probably 24 to 48 hours was so grueling. It kind of made me consider like, yo, maybe I need to just type my rhymes so I just have the digital copy. But then as I got into it, long story short, I felt like psychologically, not that it was better, it was different. And when I started to type rhymes versus write them, sometimes it was harder in a sense because I was trying to be more perfect. I felt
oh, that's a great point too.
like
Yeah.
with the writing utensil, you would just scratch stuff out and keep going. Think about what you do on a computer when you do a typo. You usually go back, and so it's like I was trying to be too perfect from the typing perspective, but then after a while, I just got really good at it. And now it's more like what you described, where I can just type out these ideas real quick, even if they're not perfect, and go back based on getting something out to kind of take me. So yeah, it's become a really super sharp part of my process. Typing out ideas. I feel like the most used app on my phone is definitely the Notes app, without a doubt.
That's such a helpful tool, right? Because again, to me, going back to the whole mind thing, right? Um, like for instance, I'm the people that know me, I constantly have my headphones on, whether it's these little joints or like the big DJ ones. I'm walking my dog. I'm at the store with wifey. I got them shits on all the time, listening to music. It's just what I do. But whenever I get an idea, like today again, I was thinking like, all right, what else? I really wanted to dissect your history, your contribution to the culture. And I was I never walk outside without my phone, and this time I did to walk my dog. And I thought it was something to ask him, like, oh, that's perfect. That's something I was wanting to know, bro. I'm like not even 2 minutes out of my house. I'm like, I'll remember. I remember. Came back in. I'm like, shit. What's the question? So the phone, from ideas to a grocery list, quick, boom, pull it out. Whether you say it or just write it, that tool is so perfect for, whatever it is. Late night, you wake up 2, 3 in the morning, get up, drink some water, and you're like, oh, maybe this. Boom, bust it out, right? It's going back to you saying the technology, right? You got a supercomputer on your phone. Take advantage of it fully. That's dope. I like that. So we're an hour in. I don't know how much time you have. We normally do just about an hour. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I have a few questions if you're okay.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Again, I respect your time. So I really wanted to kind of go down the list of the albums. The last album, I guess I want to talk two albums. I want to get into your most recent one because I think it needs to be said. But talk about how you hooked up with Blue on the King joint. This is just go. I can't say enough about this.
So yeah, man, met Blue, classic, right? So when I moved to LA, I was helping run a label called Scienz Recording.
Right.
Shout out to Chris Kraft, shout out to LG, and Shaman Work. We released The Waiting Room, Eminon's first album, right? So I'm moving to LA. Aloe Black actually lived across the street.
Oh, wow, okay.
So we were working with Eminon, so of course I meet Exile. And I also had a group called Soul Uprising with Stacey Epps.
Yeah,
shout out
to that's a great album too.
So me and Stacey Epps were shooting a video called They Don't Know, and we called Exile. I think Aloe was out of town, so he couldn't make it, but we called Exile. Like, yo, swing through the video shoot. We were shooting at Venice or something like that. And he brought Blue with him. Word up. Like that, there's a video on YouTube, Soul Uprising, They Don't Know. At the end, Blue and Exile, the video. This is like 03 though. So this is before Blue and Exile. Blue hasn't even recorded a song at this point. So I met Blue like young Blue, early Blue.
Early Blue, baby Blue.
And I'll never forget the first time I heard him rhyme, I was like, yeah, this kid is ill with it. And I remember we went on tour. We did a tour from like San Diego up through Seattle. So a West Coast tour, right? And after that tour, didn't really talk to Blue, this, that. And I remember being on Deviation Radio in the UK. Shout out to Benji B. And he asked
B, absolutely.
He's like, you've been living in LA for some years now. Like, who should we look out for? And, I definitely mentioned Carlos Nino just because he's a visionary and I knew he would continue to do great things. But I also mentioned Blue. I was like, yo, man, just toured with this cat down with the Eminon crew, and he's nasty with it. He don't got no songs out yet, but look out for him because he's coming. And it was dope because shortly after, Blue and Exile were making their waves through. So shout out to Blue. And we met then, and then that project came about very real and organic, man. Like I was talking to Blue outside of he was in town in Brooklyn at the Knitting Factory. He had a show. We're talking outside the spot, and he's like, yo, we didn't record that together. He like was sending me beats, this, that, and I'm like, yo, what's the album called? He's like, King JR. I was like, nah, come on, bro. Like, and so outside of the Knitting Factory, we're talking there. I was like, yo, give me one reason why King JR, and I'll keep it if I think it's dope. He said, I'll give you two. He said, one, because like ever since I met you, no disrespect, a good way. You give me like this King Jr. demeanor because you're very powerful with your voice, but you're peaceful, bro. Like you bring people together. That's
so dope.
Like, oh, that's dope. And I was like, damn, so what's number two? He said, because, yo, at the time, I gave you my dopest beats I ever made, like a king. So King JR. I was like, you know what? Let's go, man. King JR. So that's how that came about. Like really just him kind of having this vision, hitting me up about it. And, you know, it's Blue. I respect just his creative aesthetic since before he even made a record. So my thing was more like, yo, whatever you send me, I'm going with. Real talk. So those beats on the album is everything he sent me, and I made songs to those joints. You know what I'm saying?
I go back to you could, because again, you know, us as listeners, you know, we hear an album and yeah, it's great. You bump it, you recite it, you learn it, and it's just one of your favorite albums, and that's that. We mostly don't take it into consideration the blood, sweat, tears, or what goes into it. So, you know, when you hear interviews or whatnot, or you talk to an actual artist and say like, yeah, my album, even if it has 12 tracks, we either recorded 40 tracks or they provided me 60 beats, or, you know, I know that's far fetched, but out
Nah,
of those 60,
it's
it's in
not.
that, right? So out of those 60, 10 made it. And you could have, again, you could have easily lied to me and said, yeah, I handpicked, you know, all those joints.
Nah, man.
They mesh well together. I think it's a beautiful, again, beautiful marriage. It flows. The samples on that, you've always had, I mean, there's no secret. You're very jazz influenced,
No doubt.
right? The 1960 Jazz Revolution Again album is, I don't use this word too lightly, but it is superb. I mean, that album, just from the history, what other MC is going to give you a history of jazz artists? You
Word.
know, I mean,
I,
Jazzmatazz Guru,
yeah,
you
or
know, but
that's what
other than that, I mean, that album is a
I
book.
got it from a jazz thing. Gangstar at the end of Mo Better Blues when that
Mm.
joint, the jazz thing. And, you know, it was the first time I heard like an MC really spit jazz culture in an autobiographical way, or biographical way, where it was like, wow, this is like a biopic that's ill. And you know, just certain influences grew you to say, yeah, I want to write about certain cats in this way, and, you know, pay tribute to them. So yeah, that's definitely real. And, you know, I would say like, yeah, shout out to Blue, because all of those samples and that the whole vibe of the music was all him. You know what I'm saying? And he definitely kind of surprised me, because I didn't really know Blue did beat easily until he told me about it. Yo, I'm gonna send you something, and I was pleasantly surprised. And what I like about it is it didn't sound, although jazz vibey, it was different than other stuff that I've done.
No,
You know?
you're right, 100% correct. Because I'm like, all right, you know, the samples, but it was flipped different, right? You put on the Jazz Revolution album, and you put this one on, even though I mean, I'm a freak for horns. Anytime I hear a horn sample, freaked out, especially something like that I know, right? Yeah, I bug out. So yeah, shout out to Blue. I mean, that's a crazy joint, guys. If you guys haven't heard of King Jr., I believe there's some tapes left. If not, you can buy it, stream it, support the artist. Bandcamp, obviously, because you know it's about supporting the artist. Last two questions, brother. Again, I appreciate you taking the time. We've gone a little over, but talking about music and using different artists, handpicking, and I'm gonna get to the new album, but handpicking artists. You have a, I can say it's a project of your instrumentals, music minded, where you're on the MPC, but you have other artists that came in to assist you with the sound.
no doubt.
Um, I know you said that it hasn't happened to where you write to your lyrics. Would This is kind of hypothetical question, or just kind of like a fantasy, I guess, but let's say right now you're going to work on an album yourself, with you know, being on the beats or whatnot. Would it be something like that where you'd get, you know, someone on bass, someone on guitar, someone on, you know, organ or whatever, or would it be more MPC?
Both, both. You know, I think it would. Yeah, right now I'm feeling more of the vibes of tapping back into like putting variety on the album. You know, but still, just like back in the day, still the songs are matched to each other, but playing with different tempos, playing with different vibes. Something might be more live than others. You know what I'm saying? It have a different music style approach to it. But yeah, really thinking of these things as telling stories, like really, you know, and then also like paint pictures where they're not all gonna look the same. They're not all gonna sound the same, you know. It's the same author writing about different subjects, different times, different locations, you know, experiencing more and learning more. The more I travel, the more I see younger artists that inspire me. Like that's one of my things, right? Just seeing unknown young artists that are just dynamic and ill and don't no one know them yet, but I'm inspired by their art. I'm gonna hit them up like I usually do, like hit them up just to let them know, like, yo, someone's out there tuned in to your art and you're dope. Cheers. You know what I'm saying? Even if it doesn't mean any more than that, it's like I like intentional in that way. But yeah, that's where we are with it, man.
That's a beautiful thing. Last question, because again, I'm taking up too much of your time and my phone just hit 10%. Let's dive into this latest album, Live Life, Tell Stories. How did it come about? Crazy. I don't even want to use crazy. Beautiful production. The lyricism is dope. How'd that come about? This just dropped last Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's funny. I just got copies of the vinyl in today, so I'm excited about that. I'm gonna announce that soon.
Beautiful, absolutely.
But yeah, that came about 2009. First time touring in Germany. You know, although I've been to Europe before, I've never been to Germany, and I'm in Germany touring in Berlin actually at the time, and I meet Figub Brazlevic then, and we didn't meet through music though. He was just I think it was a photo shoot and a couple things going on, and at the side on the sideline chilling, and he was connected to these other artists that were out there from the UK, and you know, I remember as my trip was ending in Germany, I'm moving on to. He was like, "Yo, that Scienz of Life album, Leviathan. You think you could send me the acapellas?" You know, and I ain't gonna front. At first, I'm like, "Send you the acapellas? Like, what do you mean?"
Yeah, it's just like that.
We wound up making sure he got those joints. He remixes the whole album and sends it back, and it was crazy in a great way. Like, whoa, you know. And to really test it, I played it for my brother, Four Winds, Invisible Hands, who produced the whole Leviathan record, and he was blown away. Like, oh, dope. So it was one of those like, oh, this dude is nice. We can't work right now, but we gonna work. You know what I'm saying? And years passed. I feel like it was around quarantine time. We had time to kind of build and converse and start this thing, this process. And we didn't release it right away. We kind of waited. We wanted the world to be open back up a little bit. You know, we were kind of like, what? Hold on to this. And this time came around and it was perfect, man. It was like 2 days after my birthday, which was dope. You know what I'm saying? And it was another record that intentionally tapping into a certain vibe and zone that I'm a fan of, that I listen to, right?
Yeah.
Travel so much, you hear these different tones of, you know, jazzy boom bap point and this, that, and it's like, yo, I want to tap into that. And that's what this project was. But then it was also like really tipping a hat to storytelling and what it means, you know, and really putting out there in an abstract, indirect, but also direct way as I'll speak, you know, speak it. It's important, again, I said this early on, for those who really resonate with this culture and live it and walk with it, move with it, and love it and respect it, it's important for us to tell our stories while we're still here. You know what I'm saying? It's important for us to speak about the culture and our experiences in it, because it's really the only way to keep a certain aesthetic and vibe alive and continue is all of us talking about it and reminding people about it and stamping ourselves in the way that we best know how, you know. And it's like not just vocal, it's sound, it's visual, it's, you know what I'm saying, it's mindset, it's energy,
Absolutely.
it's all of these things, it's all of the nuanced things that make up culture that aren't necessarily tangible. You can't just grab them and be like, yo, this is hip hop, I got it. But you could feel it, you know what I'm saying? And you can't feel it on your fingertips. You feel it in your core, in your soul, you know what I'm saying? In your inner. And that's how you know it's real to you, you know. And that's what the culture wants. The culture wants you to show up as your full authentic self. If you're, you know, a quirky guy from the middle of nowhere in the suburbs and you've experienced the culture in a real way, then that's how you show up. Don't try to show up as somebody else. Because guess what? When you shine your realness in the depth of the culture, it's always received. It's always received. And then you're literally tapping yourself into a global, people all over the globe think a certain way that is like-minded to a lot of people because of this fabric. You know, that's the real magic, the connector. Word up.
Bro, and I'm not sure if you've gotten this before, but it's like your approach or the way you speak or articulate your thought process is such peace. You drop gems, and I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, somewhere down the line, again, I mean, I can have three of these different interviews and have new questions for you on from education to production to all this stuff. So once again, I appreciate you coming on. Before we get out of here, let the people know, one, where they can reach you, where they can get the album, talk about the vinyl, and any, if you have the liberty to, any project that you might be working on now or what you got going now.
No doubt. Yeah, well, yeah, the vinyl, dude, I'm gonna put it up. I'm gonna put it up on the bank. But joint just got in.
Beautiful.
Uh,
Look at that.
yeah, man. The color, the limited edition purple joints.
Yes.
You know, shout out to Bionic, man, Bionic Lab on the artwork joint.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I'm definitely copying that.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Figub Brazlevic, Crack Peck Records, Vinyl Digital, and the German Connect, man. It's been a pleasure just connecting and making this come to life. And again, I'm always thankful to do these things, but it's definitely always thinking about later. You know, it's like, yeah, it's for now, but it's for later too. I never really do any of this without thinking about later. It's sometimes we get so caught up in what it feels like right now. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the journey of it. That's why it's all a process. I don't rush things anymore, especially, you know, I feel like early on, I used to feel like we're in a race against. Now I feel more like now you gotta kind of go with the flow of the energy bringing and create in that way. And that's what I do. But it's always about respecting the process, enjoying the journey, but also think about later. Think about, for real, like, will this land well later? How am I painting these pictures for later? You know, is it something that could stand the test of times? I feel like my favorite music that I listen to when I'm moving around, driving or traveling, etc., a lot of it was made way back before. That's my favorite music. And I'm like, I want to make music like that. I want to make music that could live that long, you know, and really like kind of inspire people in that way, connect people in that way, you know, remind people of time in that way. That's very intentional. And, you know, peace to all the people who I like that rhyme that AG says on Next Level. peace to every single rapper on this whole earth, you know, and that's how I feel for real. If you have the audacity to pick up a mic and say anything, peace to you, and do it and put yourself in the world, no matter what anyone thinks. Art's supposed to evoke feeling, right? So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're
absolutely.
peace to every single rapper on this whole earth. Sellouts get no work. I think you better go so. I literally look at that as, yo, we got to look at the vastness of it. I talked about that earlier. Like, this thing is a monster. It's so big. Anything it touches becomes a part of it. You know what I'm saying? Literally. So it's like, don't dumb it down. It's ours, but let's embrace it. Let's protect it. Let's talk about it. Let's document it. Let's archive it. You know what I'm saying? Let's make
Important.
it's here. Let's make sure it's here. You know what I'm saying? And I say peace to every single rapper on the whole earth because I understand that everyone's not here to do the same. Everyone's purpose isn't the same, you know? But I feel blessed to know what mine, and I just stay in it. That's what keeps me in it. It's bigger than the industry. It's bigger than all of that other stuff. That don't matter. That could all close. I'm still going to do it because it's me.
That's a beautiful thing. Beautiful.
Word up.
Man, I appreciate you so much, brother, for coming on here, dropping gems again. It's a there's a peacefulness in me after discussing this with you, and I'm pretty sure if we were to get into the whole education part, it would have been a lot better. And hopefully, we can do this again. Um, yeah, give the people the Bandcamp information, and so they know where to find you.
Yeah, the easiest place to find me, John Robinson Music here on IG, johnrobinsonmusic.com. You'll find the Bandcamp and everything through there. And yeah, those are the easiest places to connect with me via IG and or email.
Perfect. Yeah, man. If you guys, I mean, I'm ahead, so I got, I got all sorts of, tapes and stuff like that. And some people are more on the surface, but if you guys don't know the depth of that discography, definitely check it out. It's all quality work. And once again, brother, I appreciate you for coming on. I appreciate you for what you've provided and contributed to the culture and education through hip. It's not taken lightly. It's not taken for granted. We see you, and if you allow us, we give you your flowers at the right time while you're in the physical.
No doubt, yo. No, I appreciate you as well, man. I mean, it's platforms like this that allow us to tell our stories in these different ways in the moment, right? And it allows also just us to channel in a very intimate way with people. Those who tap in and listen, that means something resonated with them and it's for them. Those who scroll right by, maybe they'll catch it next time.
They'll catch it. I mean, the energy will come right back, and they'll catch it next time. So again, I appreciate you, brother. My phone is at 3%, and I want to make sure I save this. I'll get at you, and I'll put this up on YouTube, and excited to see what's next on the horizon for your music and education. So I appreciate you, brother, once again.
No doubt. Peace to everyone.
Good night. Have a good one. Peace.
Peace.